Welcome to the Positively Healthy Mom podcast, where positive parenting meets well-being. Hello, and welcome to the Positively Healthy Mom podcast. I'm your host, Laura Ollinger, teen and parent well-being coach and founder of Positively Healthy Coaching. Today, I'm so excited to introduce you to Taralee Eddington, who is a certified relationship and resilience coach, speaker, and host of the Focused podcast with Taralee. As the founder of Peaceful Heart Journey, she helps individuals, couples, and families strengthen their most important relationships through her signature focus framework. Drawing from her own experience as a mom and her mantra, "What you focus on expands," Taralee empowers others to move from conflict and overwhelm to peace and connection. So I love this. Welcome, Taralee.
Hi, thank you for having me. This is exciting. Thank you.
Yeah, very exciting. So to the audience, so Taralee and I have met before. In fact, I was a guest on her podcast recently. And so I'm super excited that we get to talk some more, spend some more time together. And this time you're my guest. So happy to have you here.
Thank you. I'm excited to kind of continue our conversation too and maybe open up some new topics because we had a lot of fun on mine. So this is
We
fun.
sure did. We sure did. Yes, absolutely. So I was really excited to hear about something that you've been excited about lately. And do you want to tell me kind of like some of the things that have been on the forefront of your practice and coaching with your clients and things that when you're just really needing to help them, you were telling me about a certain kind of methodology of looking at their needs. So can you tell the audience about what this is?
Yeah, so I am a marriage crisis coach. I've been working a lot with couples and individuals in that aspect. And I learned something from Dr. Matt Townsend. So I need to give him the credit for this because he talks about these starved needs, that we all have these 7 basic needs that if they're not met in our relationships, that sometimes that's where we struggle. He talks about how we have, issues with money or the kids or chores or whatever. Those are just the smoke. And so we need to get down to the fire of what the true issue is. And that's these 7 basic needs. And starved is the acronym that he came up with that. And so I love it. And I'm taking that and teaching it to everybody I know because it's so important. And I find that it's really can tie back to these. So we have safety, trust, appreciation, respect, validation, encouragement, and dedication. And so
Mm.
those are the needs. With some those aren't being met in our relationships, that's when we start to see the issues and things arise and the problems start piling up. The smoke happens when we don't have those 7 basic needs met. One of
Yeah,
those.
yeah, yeah. So can you give us some examples of how you've used this with clients or kind of just in theory, how you would use this?
Yeah, so I mean, if we're just depending on what the issue is, say we're fighting about money. The couple comes to me and it's never about the money,
Yep.
but we're fighting about the money, whereas we ask questions and we look a little deeper and we kind of figure out that maybe there's a safety issue about around the finances. Maybe the husband is, grew up in a family that maybe had little money, and so it was very scarce. And he sees the wife spending money or whatever. Or, I mean, I've seen where it's been the husband's spending all this money on golf, and she's a little nervous about him spending all that money because she isn't feeling safe around that. So it's not
Mm,
necessarily safety as far as like physical safety. It can be emotional, spiritual, mental, all of the financial, all of the different areas of safety. So if we look at that, we can tie that back to that issue, that need that isn't being met in her. It's not about the money. It's about her safety or his safety around what that means to him.
yeah, yeah. And I like that as I like that as your example because we hear that word safe so much these days. It's just like
Mhm.
constantly being thrown around. And for
Mhm.
me, it resonates because, as you know, I kind of like work with the nervous system and do kind of that co-regulation as far as like with our, child or someone else, or
Mhm.
just like the internal nervous system and the heart brain coherence. And so about, so much of that is just like the need to get that parasympathetic nervous system kind of more activated, reduce the fight and
Yeah.
flight. And so that's kind of that feeling of safety. And so I love the idea that you're saying like all these different areas, like it could be physical, mental, emotional, social, spiritual, all these types of safety, because that's just a word that I literally hear like 10 times a day. So
Yes.
yeah,
Yes.
yeah, that was perfect. So, and then what else? Like what are some other kind of common needs that aren't being met in like a marriage or relationship?
I think a big one is appreciation. I think sometimes we
Mm,
don't feel appreciated in what we do, especially like, with teenagers, I think a lot. If we're talking about teenagers, I think
mm-hmm,
I love working with teenagers too, and I know you do too, obviously, but
mm-hmm,
um I think when we show our appreciation, even for the little things that somebody does, that can show up in as little as a thank you or acknowledging what they're doing and recognizing some of those things. And I think sometimes as women, the little daily things that we do maybe don't get seen a lot in the household or um, but showing that appreciation to our partner or to our kids is goes a long way, I feel like, for creating those bonds and that, again, back to safety and creating those strong relationships is showing that we appreciate one another for just even the little things.
mm-hmm, mm-hmm. That I feel like I can hear all my friends being like, yes, like not feeling appreciated. And so how would you go about um helping the people in your family understand what your need is and like how they can meet it in a better way without sounding like the naggy woman, like nobody appreciates me? Like how would you do it in a loving way that's asking for your need to get met?
Well, I think that that's kind of the biggest thing. I talk a lot about like we have these manuals for people. Sometimes we have these expectations that we think that they need to do this. Like my husband, oh, I want him to, I don't know, bring me flowers or something. I was just discussing this last week on my podcast. And if I want these things to happen or I want to feel these things, they can't read my mind. And just as I can't read their mind. So we need to, first of all, express that, share that. And then on the other end, if somebody expresses that need or something from us, we need to make sure that we're um, showing up in that way. If they have shared that with us, we don't just brush it off, that we know that that's important to them. And so let's make sure that we're fulfilling that for them. But I want to say that carefully because we don't necessarily want to have other people validate and they're not responsible for our feelings. And that's what I really teach a lot of people is that you're responsible for your feelings. You're not responsible for your husband's feelings. You're responsible for you're not responsible for your kids' feelings, their emotions and stuff. I mean, of course, we want to be careful and not purposely hurt anybody, but they're responsible for their own feelings. And so, I think that making sure that we're communicating that to them and not just expecting them to read our minds and not having these expectations that they may not know about. So we need to tell them. So if we're disappointed in something that somebody didn't fulfill an expectation of ours, we've basically created this manual that we've written all about how people should act and how they should be behaving, except for we don't always give that to them.
Yeah.
And we're just expecting them to do it, and they don't know that. And so if we can express those things and share with them, and it really takes a safe place to do so, because if we've been hurt before by them or have shared the things and they've brushed them off or ignored us or whatever, then it makes it very difficult to continue sharing that. So we need to make sure that we have that safe place and work through some of those things if that's not a safe place to share those things. So that's
Mm,
kind of what I think is, don't expect somebody to read your mind about it. You need to communicate and learn to communicate. And that's something that I've kind of had to work with as I've gotten older too, because I've always hated contention and I always thought that, it's something that conflict and contention was something you wanted to avoid. And I've had
mhm,
to learn as an adult and I teach my kids and stuff that conflict is okay. And
mhm,
we just need to learn how to work through those things and not just brush them under a rug or skirt past them. Like it's okay to walk through them and do so safely.
Right, right. I'm so glad you said that because I completely agree that when you avoid conflict, then it builds up into this bigger thing than it really has to be,
Mhm.
because then you have this resentment because you didn't actually say the thing, and then it happens again, and then and it can build up over years, and it's just
Yeah.
like, right, like that's not healthy for anybody, because then,
Mm.
at some point you boil over and then you snap on the person, they're like, what? Like, I didn't even know that was a thing. Like, what are you talking about? So yeah, I love that what you're talking about, just like that healthy communication. There was one other thing that was still coming up for me about that appreciation part, just because I think it strikes such a chord with moms. And so
Mhm.
what I was imagining is, asking for that appreciation from either, your spouse or your kids. And what I wouldn't want to happen is that it somehow then becomes like, in order, like you need to appreciate me, right? Or like your spouse telling the kids, like, you need to appreciate your mother, right? Because then it sounds kind of
Mm.
like a punishment, and then they're like, thanks, mom, right? Like it's just not that genuine part. So I
Mhm.
thought, well, what if we talk through that? Like, how could you ask it where, and I get this conversation would be more likely happening with the spouse than the kids. But if they are teenage kids and you're doing all this stuff for them, and then they have never appreciated that or said thank you, like that is, kind of teaching them to not appreciate, right? And so, how can we
Yeah.
teach people to appreciate, others? It's not just about us, right? Like, but appreciate, notice and appreciate. Like, what would be some ways you could talk to your clients about that?
Well, I think really we have to model it ourselves, especially
Hmm.
to our kids, to our spouse, to everything. I think something that I've kind of always done since my kids were little is that in front of them, I will acknowledge, to about their father. Thank you so much for working so hard so that I can stay home with our kids, when they were little. And I'd acknowledge that. And he'd acknowledge, thank you so much for making dinner. It was delicious or whatever. He'd acknowledge little things, or I'd acknowledge, thank you for taking that trash out, without even you saw a need and thank you. And so modeling that in front of each other and in front of the kids and modeling the appreciation to them. Like, hey, thank you for sharing that with your sister, or thank you for taking
Hmm.
your brother to his soccer game or whatever and dropping him off. I really appreciate that. That was really nice that you. So just kind of acknowledging those little things. And then when you acknowledge those, they see, okay, wait, that they didn't have to do that. That's true. Or just those little things as we show them and model that for them, even just when the waitress brings you your food, acknowledging,
Mm.
thank you so much, even though, yeah, that may be her job and she's being paid for it or whatever, we tip, but acknowledging that in front of your kids, that appreciation, I think, and gratitude and those kinds of things, I think it has to be modeled by us. And, I think my kids have always known that my husband and I have a date night once a week, whether it's just going for a bike ride, or when they were little, sometimes it was just a walk around the block or something,
Mm.
or put the kids to bed and watch a movie kind of thing, that we appreciate our time together and alone time and just to be together. So to show that we put each other first, and that's kind of part of it, but we acknowledge each other and the things that we do in front of our kids so that they can see that, look, we are appreciating one another for just even the little things.
Mm. Man, I really want to talk about all the letters in STAR, but for some reason I'm obsessed with this because I can just feel how important that is, that appreciation, and
Mhm.
also the different levels or ways, kind of like the love languages. So
Mhm.
for me, I don't need a lot of like verbal appreciation.
Mhm.
Like that doesn't, yeah, it's nice if somebody says something, but it doesn't matter to me because either way, I know that I'm doing something good. So I don't need that feedback. Um,
Yeah.
but maybe I do want a different type of appreciation. I haven't really kind of thought through the other kinds, but I just, generally want to feel that my kids and I have a good relationship. And so that's kind of all the appreciation I need. And that's not even necessarily appreciation, but it is just kind of acknowledging and appreciating that the relationship is a good one. But what do you think about like in a marriage when people have different proportions of how or the ways they want to be appreciated? Like, what are some things that come up there that might be things that our audience could benefit from hearing about?
Yeah, like you talked about the love languages. That's definitely because how somebody feels loved and appreciation, and appreciation kind of is just, it definitely doesn't necessarily need to be the love language. It can kind of be just showing, acknowledging what somebody has done for you, or gratitude, or something like that. I think that with as far as like couples, we can kind of show that appreciation. We need to make sure we're acknowledging, because sometimes when somebody shows you appreciation, that's how they want to receive it too.
Right,
So
right.
that's, if my kids, I think I have some that just don't, like you said, don't necessarily need the verbal acknowledgement of
Mhm.
what they've done, but my appreciation can be shown in something else, in how I spend time with them, or if they took the trash out or whatever, then I have more time that I can spend with them. And I know that they like that quality time. And so it gives me time to be able to spend with them. And so I think we need to maybe kind of be aware of those things. And I think if we're just thinking about, okay, how can I show appreciation to this person who maybe
Mhm.
doesn't need the verbal, but maybe
Mhm.
they need a, a head rub. My daughter sometimes gets headaches. And so just sitting down with her and giving her a head massage means a lot more to her than anything I could say.
Mhm.
And so I recognize that. I know that. And so that's maybe acknowledging that kind of appreciation in that way.
Yeah. And you know what else I was thinking just now? Like, when I want appreciation, it's for when I do something that's kind of above and beyond. So, like, sometimes if I'm picking up my son and it's kind of like late at night, and I'm like, oh my gosh, I really would rather be home right now. Like, I don't want to be out driving when it's late, like, kind of. But if it's just like typical everyday stuff, I don't care as much. And so, I'm wondering if this is striking a chord with moms everywhere, where it's kind of like you're doing the extra thing that you maybe didn't have to do. It's like, hello, come on. Like, now I want some recognition. What do you think?
Yeah. Yeah, I think sometimes, and that's kind of maybe where our partner or our spouse, or another one of our, teenagers or something, can be like, yeah,
Mhm.
mom was really tired. That was kind of cool that she went and picked you up anyway, or something
Mm.
like that. I think if we can kind of help recognize some of these things in those that are around us, that she didn't have to do that. That was really late. She was tired,
Mhm.
or something like that. That I think can kind of go a long way. Just the acknowledgement of it can really help us feel better sometimes. But sometimes that may not be somebody's starved need. That may not be something that they
Right.
need appreciation, because a lot of times, I have one kid who, well, I say kid, she's 21 now, but she isn't one that necessarily does anything for any acknowledgement or any appreciation. Like, it almost would, she doesn't need that. That's not one of her needs. But,
Mhm.
I think for her, maybe just encouragement or validation or one of those is something that can kind of really, it kind of goes along with all of them. I think they kind of all build on one another too.
Yeah.
So, but I think, did that answer your question? Maybe I
Yes,
I
yes,
kind of went off
because
a little bit.
well, we did, but that's okay because I was thinking, wow, we really are. I'm obsessed with this appreciation concept because I know it's so important, and I always hear my friends talk like the feeling that they're talking about that they don't feel appreciated, and so I'm like, I really want to make sure we spend enough time on that, and kind of just to finish that part. Sometimes, yeah, it could just be the smallest thing. So, say I am picking up my son at a late time, if he was just like, "Mom, thanks," so that because otherwise he wouldn't be able to go, like, if he didn't have a ride
Mhm.
home, right? And so, if all I would need to hear in that moment would just be like, "Thanks, Mom. Thanks for driving me," right? Like, it was so simple.
Yeah.
And so maybe that's something that like I could spend more time. I mean, I'm not saying he doesn't do that, by the way. In fact, he's really good
Yeah.
about it. But like I'm just thinking as a concept of like a teaching moment that like that's really important. Just those small little praises throughout for any type of an effort by someone for us. So
Yeah.
let's go through because I know we're kind of going out of order. What's another need that you think is really important that the moms hear about today?
I think really, I mean, we've got respect, I think is a big one that I hear sometimes where
Mhm.
I feel like if, say, especially like as I work a lot with women who have grown children who maybe
Mhm.
don't feel respected because their child isn't living the way that they think they should live. Well, I taught them better than that. And so they feel disrespected that
Mm.
the way that I taught them is they're not doing what, you know, living how I taught them to live. Or I see a lot of young adults who kind of maybe were raised in a church and kind of as they get older decide not to really be part of any organized religion or something. And the parents of those kids might feel a little bit disrespected on that. Well, I taught them well. Why
Mm.
are they not? And it's very much a common thing for 20 somethings to kind of try to find their grounding and stuff a lot more nowadays. And they're not finding it in organized religion a lot. And so eventually I've seen where they come back and stuff. But
Mhm.
during that time, depending on how that parent might react to that situation, disrespected, it can a lot of times push those kids a lot further away
Yes.
than if because their need is it's not about the religion, it's not about that. It might
Right.
be more fear that the parent is fearful that their kid is going to, I don't know, because they're not tied to a religion that they're now going to forever be lost, and it doesn't necessarily have to be like that. And that's not a disrespectful thing to the parent. I don't think these kids mean it that way. It's
Mhm.
just they're finding their own footing. But if the parent reacts out of fear and stuff because they're feeling disrespected in that situation, then it can really be bad on all ends, but I've seen that a lot where kids, 20 somethings and stuff will cut parents off because
Yes.
of the respect. That's typically what it is. The parent isn't feeling respected. They try to
Mm.
control a little more and want
Mhm.
their kids to do what they've been raised to do and taught how they want to be them to be raised and whatever. And so that's kind of one of the other things that I've seen quite a bit. And so
You
if
know
we can
what?
get that respect need and recognize that parent,
Yeah.
that has nothing to do with that. And where can we find, and that's the thing is sometimes our spouse or our kid, maybe is not fulfilling our need in that area. So where can
Mhm.
we find that elsewhere? Because
Mm.
we can't, if after we've talked with them about it, we've, explained it and they're not willing to change, you have that
Mhm.
conversation. Are you willing to help me with this? Because I'm not feeling this.
Mhm.
And most of the time they're like, yes, I'm going to. But if they're not, then you need to decide, am I okay with that? Where do I want my relationship to be with this? Because I'm not going to change that person. I'm not going to get that from them. So I
Right.
either need to decide that that's okay. I don't need that from them. I get that somewhere else. Or yes, I do need this. And so now where do we go from here? And because you
Mm.
can't control that other person, you can only control you and how you feel about it. So that's where I kind of help people work through those kinds of decisions because it's not always easy sometimes.
Yes. Yes. I loved everything that you said, and I was so happy you said the control word, the C word, because I was like, as you were describing, like with that kind of religious need for autonomy for the young adult. But
Mhm.
I know I have met just in a personal context a lot of people who had very controlling parents as when they
Mhm.
were teenagers, and so they have then gone the opposite direction kind of
Mhm.
in specifically in the religious context that you were talking about. They're like, I'm never going back to
Mhm.
church again, blah blah. And the funny thing is that it doesn't have to be that way, but it's because they felt so controlled. And it's like exactly what you were saying, like the respect and the fear. And so it's like, how would you, if you were coaching that adult, that parent, how would you kind of coach them to kind of let go and kind of stand back. And the reason for my question is because I see so much of that exact same pattern, but in different categories, not the religious, but just other categories with parents and teenagers. So I have always the parents that want to control the teenagers and the teenagers are rebelling, right? So how do you
Mhm.
approach that?
Yeah, I mean, the biggest thing, there was a book I read many years ago that was like how to do life with your adult children, leave the, keep your mouth shut and the welcome mat out or something
Oh
like that. It
yes,
was like,
I've heard that too.
have
Yes,
you heard
yes,
that book?
yes.
Yeah, that's the truth because I think, as I've heard the analogy where with when they're teenagers, you're kind of coaching them or whatever, and then as they get older, you kind of are more of a consultant and stuff. And so as they get older, you kind of need to step back and let them make their own decisions and you ask them. And a phrase that I think I use a lot, especially because I have a 25, 21, and 19-year-old now, is when they come to me or they're talking to me about plans or things that they're doing and maybe I I don't I don't ever really offer my opinion until
Mm-hmm.
they ask or I'll say, "Oh, have you thought of this, this, and this?" rather
Mm-hmm.
than because if I suggest it, then they don't
Yeah.
want to, but thankfully I have excellent relationship with my kids and it's hasn't, I think sometimes through their teenage years it's hard and so having to bite your tongue and keep your mouth shut is hard and it but I think what's more important sometimes we have to remember that what's more important, is
Yes.
it me winning this argument or is it my relationship with them? So if there's something that I see that they're doing or that I completely disagree with, I need to really get down to what is that need? Is it, respect? Am I feeling disrespected by this? And that's why I am I fearful? Never ever parent out of fear because that is to me is I think something that we do, especially when they're teenagers or
Mm-hmm.
young adults, because we can see or we think we can see or we know better than they do. And we don't always know what and where they're going with their life. And so we may have a way that we want it to go, but that's not always the right thing. And so we need to not parent out of fear and not react out of fear ever and stop and get into our own thoughts. And why is this bringing up emotions? Why do I really want to and feel the need to control or feel the need to handle this situation? What is it about this situation? Am I feeling disrespected? Am I, do I not trust that they can make a good decision? Am I worried about their safety or my safety or, start going through some of those things.
Mm.
Why am I feeling this about whatever it is they're doing? And so make it more about you and less about them and
Yeah.
and understand your own thoughts at why this is happening and why we're feeling the need to control that. And then it goes back to ask yourself, what's more important, this decision they're making or this whatever they're doing? Is it more important that or my relationship with them? So kind of have to
Yes.
weigh those things out.
Yes, you said that perfectly. Yes. There was one thing that I thought of, which is one of my kids loves to push my buttons and loves to try to get a big reaction out of me. And I have just, I mean, I think I just knew this instinctively. But even more so now is just to like not react so much because that's what they're looking for. So if they're like,
Mhm.
Mom, I need to go blah, blah, blah. And, kind of the inside of me is like, you can't do that, right? But now if I'm just like, oh, okay, tell me more about that, right? Then it takes all the fun out of it for them and then they don't want to do it anymore. But it was really just like the excitement of, kind of getting into something. Have you seen that
Yep.
happen before?
Oh yeah, yeah. I teach respond, don't react.
Mm-hmm.
Respond, which is
Mm-hmm.
when you respond, that is more intentional. That is more you're cultivating your thoughts and whatever when you respond rather than react. That's kind of
Right.
what, because I think a lot of times we do. It's like, whoa, wait, we want to react
Yeah.
and but I think if we respond, that's more intentional and more controlled, I guess, of ourselves when we respond.
Right, right,
Yep.
right. Okay, so this has been an amazing. I feel like I could spend hours going through all the letters, but we don't have time for that today. So how can people find you going forward?
Yeah, so my podcast is called the Focus Podcast with Taralee. They can every Friday we have new episodes there. But peacefulheartjourney.com is where I have resources and lots of things that they can go and check out there. And all my socials, peacefulheartjourney.com. So, or Peaceful Heart Journey is where they can find Instagram and Facebook and all of that. So, yeah, thank you so much. This has been really fun.
I agree. Thank you so much. I appreciate it.